Welcome to another episode of Axe of the Blood God, an independent RPG podcast. I'm your host, Kat Bailey. Joining me, as always, my lovely co-host, Nadia Oxford.
Hello, Kat. It's a very normal day, very normal schedule. Everything's very normal today. Just a regular old Saturday. How about you?
Also joining us is Eric Van Allen.
Hello, just a typical Saturday full of 12 hours of streaming and then 12 more hours after it. Totally normal day here.
Poe agrees. Hey, we're in the grind life. This is what it's like to be an influencer, and Matt McMuscles would know all about that because he's right with us right now.
Yes, I'm an influencer, of course. There's still no better name, I guess. But what I do enjoy more than influencing people is beat 'em ups and even RPG beat 'em ups, in fact. So thanks for having me on today.
Yes, that's amazing. We're going to be doing, this is continuing on from our previous episode in which we talked about fighting games and RPGs. This week, we're going to be talking about beat 'em ups and RPGs, and it's all part of our weekend-long charity stream back for a third year in a row in support of Trans Lifeline. We have an incredible schedule lined up for you. We're doing a Nuzlocke run. We're going to be playing so many video games. We're going to be doing VG Tinder. We're going to be playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3, like 6 hours worth of Baldur's Gate 3 until my eyeballs fall out.
Oh, hello.
Moonblaze Wolf is going to be doing another speed run. Can we announce what the speed run is at this point, or have we already done that?
Yeah,
it
it's
is
Super Mario RPG. Yeah.
If not, I ruined it. Sorry, everyone. Spoiler.
That's super exciting. So we'll all be there. This is going to be taking place all through the weekend. Go check out the schedule over on the site. That's definitely Poe. Poe is very excited as well.
Poe says donate, all right? You have to donate for Poe. If you see Poe on the stream, you have to donate.
Poe says trans rights. You can go on our shop, where right now, shop.bloodgodpod.com. We are running a special promotion, 10% off on all orders, and 50% of the proceeds go toward Trans Lifeline as part of the charity stream. Use the promo code TRANSRIGHTS. That's right. shop.bloodgodpod.com. And of course, you can support us on all of our channels, including patreon.com/bloodgodpod, where for just $1 a month, you can get the show ad-free. And you can join our Discord. And we record this every single week on twitch.tv/bloodgodpod. Phew. I think that's all of the promotions right there.
You done it.
We did it. Matt, we're so happy to have you here. But for the people who don't know you, I don't know who's here who doesn't know you. Please introduce yourself.
Well, I am Matt McMuscles. It's funny because I'm not particularly muscular, and I have been influencing people for like 15 years, give or take. But yeah, just been doing stuff on YouTube for about that time, and have had a lifelong obsession with beat 'em ups in particular, like beat 'em ups, fighting games. Then it filters down to action games, etc. So I think I went to a birthday party where the family of the kid, I forget his name.
He's not important.
It's really not. He's really not.
Yeah.
But they had rented out an entire arcade.
Oh,
rich kid. It was, yeah, exactly. I think like the arcade wasn't open yet, so they were able to like have it open for the party for about an hour before they would open, and all the arcades were set on free play, and that was the first time I played Final Fight. And yeah, it kind of just went from there. I got really, really far, and then not far enough that I could finish it before the party kind of ended and everything. So I was like, no, getting dragged out of the arcade hall.
Must save Jessica.
Get out of here. You're not spending enough quarters.
And I think after that, like a year or two after that, I was playing Final Fight, the Super Nintendo port, at a friend's house. Good, I could finally beat it, but you can't, because you can't beat Final Fight on the Super Nintendo. It's incredibly hard. And it just from there, like, I played Streets of Rage at a friend's Genesis, and then I got into the genre as a whole. Double Dragon on the NES, specifically, and when I started reading in magazines and such that like there's a Dungeons and Dragons beat 'em up, for example, that Capcom were making, I was like, no way, and I didn't get to play until several years later, obviously, because here in Montreal, like arcades were never that big of a thing. There was like two, three at
Same as
the
Toronto.
most. Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's sad.
Well, it wasn't a huge scene over here. I could be wrong, of course, since I was probably at the age where my mom was not going to encourage me to hang out at arcades. So, but as I will kind of talk about later, most of my arcade experiences were in like food courts and whatnot.
All right. So yeah, just really excited to talk about this subgenre with you guys today.
Yeah.
I think for a kid of a certain age, namely about my age, beat 'em ups were I was all about the beat 'em ups in the arcades. They always had the best graphics. You had a Nintendo at home, but you would be in an arcade. You'd be like, look at those incredible 16-bit sprites. Look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh my God. They would just instantly stand out to you. You would feel like you were actually playing a cartoon, and they were always so very, very cheap. And when I say cheap, I mean expensive, because you would always get to the second level or the third level, and invariably you would run into a boss where the game would just like, no, screw you. You're paying quarters now. You're too far. This boss, you can't stun them. You can't knock them down. They're just going to hit you over and over and over again, and you're going to keep dying until you can finally grind them down. But I hope you're having an amazing time.
Yeah, my history with side-scrolling beat-em-ups, like, I was a huge fan of the genre as well. I think it started with someone from my brother's bar mitzvah gave him Double Dragon on the Game Boy, which is actually a very good port. And I really loved that, because we didn't have any good games on Game Boy except for, like, Tetris, and I was never a big Tetris fan. Gasp. And then I played the original Double Dragon in the arcade not too long afterwards, when I had an uncle from Northern Ireland who visited, and we went to a pub that was owned by another Irish relative, and I learned there that Irish people don't really leave pubs very quickly, so he gave me a whole bunch of quarters, and it's like, hey, go play Double Dragon. So I did, and I was really amazed at the difference between, oh my God, the Game Boy is so different from this, like, but then I also realized, hey, that's really interesting how they took this game and really made it for the Game Boy instead of putting some, arcade port on there and making a mess out of it. So that was an interesting education. I actually kind of fell out of beat 'em ups because my mother was never really on, like, she was never really like, oh my God, you can't play violent games, but she didn't like me playing games where I hit women. So I was a real smartass though. She's like, you can't play them in the house, but of course I go to my friend's house and say, hey Mom, I play Double Dragon. So I had this really smart ass line once where I went to my friend's house, played Double Dragon 2, for the Revenge for NES, which is an amazing game. And I came home and I told my mom, hey Mom, I played Double Dragon 2 at my friend's house. And she's like, oh. And I said, it's okay, you don't hit women in the game. You don't hit them with like sticks or anything. She was like, oh, okay, good. And I said, you hit them with morning stars. And she she didn't think that was very funny, but I thought it was. So yeah, it was a long time before I got back into beat 'em ups. But like you, Matt, like I saw Shadow over Mystara and Tower of Doom in the arcade, and I was just like, holy crap, this is incredible. And it was.
I don't think Capcom owned the rights to those character designs. I think they always have to go to D&D or
Anime Raceland.
But Capcom should be like, can we just own the design for the thief from Shadow Mystara? Can we just have that as our own, because it's such a goated design? She looks so cool, and that's just the one that we want. Thank you, and just keep it that way.
We need MVC. We need the Mystara reps in there for
MVC
please. 5, I guess, actually, but yeah.
Or just have the red dragon show up as a boss, and his head just pops up from the top, and then that's the character.
Oh, sin.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
My dream is to do a Shadows over Mystara Pantheon episode where the three of us play through, and
I would be there. Like I am there already. Just seeing that intro in the arcade with the big with Shadows over Mystara in particular, you have the intro where you see the huge ass dragon just like scrolls up and up and up. And I'm like, oh god, I hope this game is on the Nintendo 64. If you want to talk about denial, and I actually went on like the primitive versions of like message boards and BBSs back in the day, and it said, "Hey guys, do you think that the Nintendo 64 will be able to do this kind of stuff?" And they're just like, "Oh, you poor summer child." No, absolutely
Or like,
not.
hey guys, do you think Capcom blankety blank will be on the N64? No, it
No.
won't. Like, it doesn't matter what game it is. I think it was the Saturn that got like that Double Dragon Dungeons and Dragons collection, but I think that was only in Japan, that release. I don't think that came
Yeah, that never came out.
across. But
Unfortunately.
it was still really cool when I first heard about it. You'd look in the back of an EGM, you'd see like the import section and like the greatest section ever, where it would tell you about the wonders of Japanimation.
Yes.
So I think I remember seeing a listing or something for Dungeons and Dragons Capcom or something, and I was going, "Oh, what is that for?" I'm like, the Saturn. I don't even know anyone that owns a Saturn at the time, so I resigned to myself and never be able to play it.
And yet,
well, beat 'em ups, RPGs, superficially very different, but there is a lot of crossover. They come from very different backgrounds, opposite sides of town, but every so often they would meet for a brawl. Beat 'em ups they came from arcades. They're grounded in Bruce Lee, Game of Death, Enter the Dragon, stuff like that. If you think about martial arts movies from the 70s, beat 'em ups. RPGs, on the other hand, they come from Token, Dungeons and Dragons, war games, intellectual. And why do you call them beat 'em ups anyway? Because instead of killing someone in one hit, which was very common in 1980s games, you punch and kick them and bap them and make them barf until they die.
Until they die. Or blink away, whichever.
Yeah, usually blink away. And one of the first and most formative games in the beat 'em up genre was a little game called Renegade. It was but in Japan it was called Hot Blooded Kunio-kun. It was developed by Yoshihisa Kishimoto for the Famicom. It did come over here as Renegade, but it was Renegade's sequel, River City Ransom, which in so many ways brought the RPG genre to the beat 'em up genre and has spawned many imitators and sequels over the years. Most notably, one of my favorite games of all time, Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Heck yeah.
And also River City Girls and many, many more. Matt, you said that you've always played like the first 15 minutes or so of River City Ransom and before bouncing up.
Yeah, for the original, I'd always rent it and like have such a good time, like picking up all the trash cans and little pipes hanging around. It was really fun to play. And then I'd easily get lost, have no idea where to go, and always lose my money and never be able to afford that one little snack in a shop that would like increase my HP or whatever it was. It was like a little far beyond my skill set back in like 1991. But yeah, I'd consistently rent it and always want to play that 15 minutes. And then, it took me until a long time later. I think it took me until River City games started getting re-released on the DS. I think it was the DS where they had a couple. The DS or the 3DS, where I was, I always respected them, but then I actually got into them. I think it was one that they had a lot of quality of life improvements. I can't remember the name of this re-release, but I think it was essentially a remake, like River City Ransom EX, something like that. And that's when I like started really getting into it and figuring out how it works, how to get to each neighborhood really quickly. And then when the River City Girls games came out, I was really interested in that. So interested that one of the designers of River City Girls, Bannon, said, "Hey, do you want to voice a character in River City Girls too?" And I was like, maybe, sure. And he's like, "He's a hipster skeleton that's kind of annoying." And I go, "That's perfect for me." So that was
born to play.
Yeah, that was the part I was born to play, baby. So yeah, like that was a real thrill. And he actually, Bannon got his start making River City Underground, which was like basically the fan made beat 'em up that went through crowdfunding, which is actually really, really good. I think it was kind of made official by Arc System Works. They kind of gave that game their blessing, so that's a really underrated one. So yeah, the series still continuing really strong today. I think like new releases are still coming out.
I remember I would see the River City Rant. I always knew the Kunio games immediately because they had that distinct art style. And you would be like, oh, they're playing sports now.
Yeah, they're playing soccer. We had the soccer game. The music was really good.
And dodgeball and volleyball.
Was
Crashing the Boys.
Was that the Mario Party, the Mario Sports spinoff before the Mario Sports spinoff? I don't know which came first, like a chicken or egg situation, but I do feel like those were just as like prevalent as the actual Mario Sports spinoffs.
Yeah, I think they're definitely before it, but they're always like new releases. Like I don't think they collected them into like a big mini game. I think that actually did happen eventually, like later on. But yeah, it's crazy when you think about it now. Like let's take this beat 'em up franchise and spin it off into sports of all things, and
that's why I love it.
It was an RPG-ish like take on it too. So like it splintered off into even more things. And now it's an Arxis empire. It's just the Kunio universe because now Double Dragon's folded into it. Like now Billy and Jimmy are appearing in River City Girls 2 as DLC. So that's pretty exciting as well.
Also the Kunio characters appear a lot in the music video for DVP by who did DVP? That was Eric, you like them, the band. PUP.
Oh, you're talking about Pup? You talking about Pup?
I don't know if it's PUP or Pup, but yeah,
the
Pup did the video
themselves, yeah.
For DVP, and there's a lot of Kunio characters in that, and it's one of my favorite music videos because it's not just like, oh boy, here's nostalgia bait. It actually really lines up the characters and the lines with the music. It's fantastic.
Eric, you named your character in the Baldur's Gate 3 stream Crash and the Boys, right?
Crash and the Boys.
Crash and the Boys.
Crash and the Boys.
And the Boys. Family comes from
it's an ancestral name, you know, from the Highlands. I
the
think
Orcish Highlands.
It fit the vibe really well of that character, that like half orc that we ended up making that kind of looks like what if an ICP Juggalo got really into the Joker. I cannot wait to run that character tomorrow.
That's gonna be a lot of fun.
Neither can I.
Yeah, me neither. I think all of our characters that we created really fit our individual personalities. But apparently, Kishimoto based his games on his experiences in high school, where he was getting in lots of fights, and actually kind of reminds me a little bit of Persona, which itself is grounded in sort of a high school setting, right? So in that way, that there's a little bit of an intersection. River City, the River City Ransom games also. Sorry, my brain is completely shot here. As we moved on, the River City Ransom games. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, let's move on.
Moving on to
the broke cat already. We already broke cat. We're like barely into the charity stream, and we finally broke cat.exe.
Look, y'all, we started like an hour earlier than our usual time. It's like 8:30 in the morning, and I just had my coffee, so my brain is like shorting out right now.
Hearing the Windows sound.
Done. So the River City Ransom games, they were very much console experiences, but beat 'em ups were also very grounded in arcades, as we were kind of talking about. And one of the most interesting intersections of the two were Capcom's Dungeons and Dragons games, which were RPGs in an arcade format. And it turned out that it was kind of perfect because grinding and quarter munching, they just go together so well. As we discovered to this day, where microtransactions and grinding go well together. Grinding, truly the dark side of RPGs.
It always comes back to the grind.
I feel like there's crazy thread you can draw there between like the quarter munching days of the arcade and like Zenless Zone Zero and like the gotcha machine. Like there is somehow, some way, a thread that like ricochets and
wrote
rebounds.
about that.
It's a direct line.
Yeah,
someone got really mad at me about it.
It's like we somehow worked our way there.
Maybe Nadia remembers this. Do any of you guys know the thing about Double Dragon 3 in arcades, the original version of that?
Ooh, I don't.
No.
So in Double Dragon 3, this is not strictly RPG, but just because you said grinding, Double Dragon 3, you go into an in-game store where a shopkeeper gets like, take some weapons. You had to put in more quarters to buy those weapons. So you had to use real money. This is the first microtransaction.
Evil.
And people hated it so much that I think for the Japanese release of Double Dragon 3, because the American one came first, they just made sure to stop that. They just stripped that out of the game, and then you just used points or whatever. They're all free, the weapons. So yeah, they experimented with that just to see if they could get away with it. They did not. So yeah, Double Dragon 3 has that infamous
only forestall the inevitable, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to Capcom though, with Dungeons and Dragons, like it made total sense to get that partnership going, because Capcom also had their two other fantasy medieval beat 'em ups going on, which was Knights of the Round, which had a leveling up mechanic. As your character would gain levels, they'd get more and more armor as they would go on. And then King of Dragons, which was essentially just a Dungeons and Dragons RPG without the Dungeons and Dragons RPG.
Yeah.
Because it was a big red dragon at the end as well.
There's a big red dragon. There was like Draconians. There was a whole bunch of stuff that was obviously TSR owned, but it was called something else.
Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering even if it got to the point where they wanted to do that and they pitched it, and maybe it didn't come together, so let's just change the names and we'll try again next year with Tower of Doom. Because I played that recently. I never played it that much, but like I played it recently for my channel, and I was just going like, wow, this is, not quite as up there, obviously, as the Dungeons and Dragons games, but it's so similar. Like it's the same classes essentially. They all level up individually. They get like their base attack gets more and more elaborate and stuff, but it's still very, very underrated. I was always kind of sad that the Dungeons and Dragons collection that came out back in like 2012, 2013.
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah, it's a great collection, but I was sad that King of Dragons wasn't included, even though it's not technically part of it. It's still part of it,
Yeah, it's a precursor.
Yeah.
We were talking about microtransactions. Shadows of Mystara has a weapon that can only be earned by using something called a cursed sword, which takes away your health every time you use it. So in effect, and so you just have to keep plugging quarters because you are going to die.
Right.
Huh. So in effect, that is a microtransaction right there.
Well, I guess if it's optional. Reminds me of there's weapons exactly like that in like Final Fantasy games where you have this cursed sword that gives you every status element on the book, but if you use it a certain amount of times, you get this amazing pristine sword, or was a shield or ring, I can't remember, all of the above.
I find that sort of thing interesting, though, because like Streets of Rage 4, when that came out recently, that's like a modern new take on that genre. And it also still had some of the stuff where your like special attacks would make you lose health and stuff.
Yeah.
But I found that ended up being a really interesting balancing decision. So I couldn't just like constantly spam specials and stuff like that. I did have to like think about when I wanted to do my full combos, how I could get that health back. And it ended up being like a reason why I really, really liked Streets of Rage 4, which was it felt like it kept the spirit of the original games, but like thought about how to put them in a like modern setting and make them like understandable to a modern audience. So maybe there is something, design wise to all of the quarter munching stuff. Like down below in the gutters of monetization, there was an idea about design and balance.
Worth noting, Dungeons and Dragons, very popular over in Japan, to the point that they kind of had their own sort of spin-off in a way with Record of Lodoss War. And in fact, when I look at Shadows over Mystara, I do actually get Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth vibes from it. The art is just fantastic, really wonderful to look at, and the music is really terrific as well, which of course is like a hallmark of the beat 'em up genre. You just really enjoy that amazing art as you fight hordes and hordes and hordes of enemies. And it's really grounded in D&D lore as well. You'll see a lot of familiar enemies like the Beholder as you're fighting through. The actual narrative is a little bit limited, but there is some narrative choices specifically where you're going to end up going. And then the actual gameplay is quite dense, I have to say, just in terms of all the items that you can get, the weapons you can do. There are RPG aspects where you can cheese enemies and such. It's really, really cool. I really want to like sit down and just properly play through it. I've only played it piecemeal over the years.
It was one of those games I saw in the arcades, and it's also one of those games where I realized I'm never going to finish this unless I'm a millionaire and I have like a whole bunch of quarters I can plug in here or loonies.
You can just get it now on like Steam or whatever.
Now you can, sure, but back when I was a kid, it's like, oh my god, it's an RPG. I want to play this. I want to finish this, but it is designed to eat my allowance, which is not very much.
It's not in the beat 'em ups bundle, is it?
It is not. No,
it should be, but no.
Boo! It's probably too much of a license these days with Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah,
right.
It's sad though that I think it's playable on most things. Like if you own the Xbox 360 version, pretty sure that's backwards compatible on modern Xboxes. I'm not so sure for PS3 to PS4, PS5, but it had a Wii U port, that collection.
Right.
And the fact that wasn't pushed forward to the Switch when the Switch got obviously very popular is kind of a shame because, you know, I don't know how much that would cost, but if you put that there and put it at a decent price, that would pay for the license.
I'd buy it right
just
there.
A Switch version, but the Steam one is always there, like you said. So, and it's always pretty cheap. Like it's always like sub $20. So.
The spiritual successor to the Dungeons & Dragons games, Tower of Doom and Shadows over Mystara, was Vanillaware's Dragon's Crown. A game that I did play all the way through. Really enjoyed. I played through as the elf. I played solo. That game is definitely a grind. You do have to repeat a lot of missions, especially once you get to the end game. But it's also, again, hallmark of the beat 'em up genre. Beautiful to look at, a lot of fun to play. It has sort of the branching paths similar to the Dungeons and Dragons games, where you might like go, we'll go this way and we'll have a different outlook on the level. We'll go this way and we'll have another outlook on the level. And then because it's a Vanillaware game, it has tons of amazing food and very strong barbarian ladies.
Very strong.
They
very cute fairy ladies.
Mm-hmm. I love Vanillaware, like, just as a developer, because I do think they have a love for not just older games, but a love for a like very specific niche subgenres of stuff that continues to like come through in their games. Like Odin Sphere and Dragon's Crown both feel very much like games that looked at Mystara and games like that and said, why don't we have more of those? Why did that not become a thing? And then Unicorn was the same way too.
Yeah, some of the team for Dragon's Crown worked on Mystara, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I think it was George Kamitani who's the head honcho. Worked on Tower of Doom, I think. And I think, hold on, I have this somewhere. He worked on a Dungeons and Dragons game for the Famicom, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Hillsfar. In
really?
1991. So that's interesting. It's like his first credited game. So, yeah, like what I haven't played is the PS4 version of Dragon's Crown. Was it called Dragon's Crown like Pro? Something like that?
Yeah.
It was a little bit modified, yeah.
Oh, okay. A little, like it didn't have like, like a huge amount of changes. It was just like a remastered version essentially, right?
Yeah, it was a remaster.
Okay.
There might have been some quality of life improvements, but I don't think they were like up front and center.
Okay. I have to download
struck me as being pretty similar. I found it incredible that this game came out on the PS Vita. It didn't run extremely well. It had some
they tried
major slowdown, but it was playable on it, and I think it had crossplay or like cross saving, not crossplay, cross saves. So that was really nice.
Sense.
Yeah.
And re-release the Vita version of Muramasa onto console.
There you go.
Yes.
How has that not happened yet? Damn.
It's a great game. Very underrated part of Vanillaware's back catalog, I think.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't necessarily call Muramasa a beat 'em up. It's a hack and slash.
Definitely,
I don't know exactly what the difference is. Maybe it's just that one has swords and one is more like with fists. Is that the
It has
case?
pipes.
I
No, you're right.
I feel like to look at the difference, I'd have to almost look at like what's the furthest out on each one, because there is definitely a difference between, say, like Sekiro and Streets of Rage. Like those are two very different games, but at the core of it, are you essentially kind of doing the same thing, and it's just kind of formatted slightly differently, and you're using different moves and different inputs, but it is like the same structure? Like there's a really interesting form versus function argument there about what hack and slash and beat 'em up differentiates. But I do think it's that number one, like sword, and maybe number two, like a little bit more lethality, a little bit more like parry focus as well. The idea that you're working with weapons and parrying and not necessarily like blocking as often. I don't know. That is an interesting question. What is the difference there?
I think it's because beat 'em ups are entirely focused on the combat, like entirely, except for like examples that we're talking about, Dungeons and Dragons, where there is a little bit of exploration and nuance into what you're doing. But beat 'em ups are just like beat 'em up versus like Sekiro or even Muso games. Muso games is like there is no challenge except for when you get to like a boss or like a really tough character, because all those fodder enemies are just standing there waiting. Like just versus a beat 'em up where exactly. Versus a beat 'em up where even 1 to 2 enemies can be a problem, just depending on who they are, and it's because your options are so limited versus a Muso where you have unlimited options and how to take them apart. So I find Muso's very hack and slash, but hack and slash beat 'em up, that's also very very similar. But like Sekiro and things like that from soft games, or even character action games like Devil May Cry. I find like character action to be like the closest evolution of where beat 'em ups were kind of going, even though those definitely have some exploration elements in them. It's very interesting, and it's also interesting talking about this nowadays where beat 'em ups are basically in their renaissance era almost, where we're getting so many good ones and new ones are getting constantly announced. When I made a video where I played every single Double Dragon port game ever made, I made the foolish declaration that this franchise will never come back. We are completely done. And now you can't go 2 weeks without a new Double Dragon thing being announced. Like, it's crazy.
They just announced a new thing very recently, actually.
Yeah.
It looks kind of bad, actually.
It looks kind of bad.
They tend to be kind of bad. I like Double Dragon Neon, but otherwise a lot of these rehashes and remakes tend to be kind of not the Double Dragon of my childhood.
And even Double Dragon 4, which was like Kishimoto came back to work on that. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's too old school for its own good, and not like the good Mega Man 9 or 10 way. And then like, okay, well let's make this new 3D one, Double Dragon Revive. Great title, by the way. And it's made by Ukes, which at least gives me kind of...
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's 50-50.
It really is.
It's hidden in the press release, but Ukes is part of it. I'm like, that could be good. I liked some of the WWE games, you know? So we'll see where that goes. But I do think right now there is a missing... Of all the beat 'em ups that are coming back, like there is like no RPG beat 'em up that that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm forgetting, but there's not something to fill that hole that's like coming out soon or in the future or whatever. And I think there needs to be one.
I think the game that we haven't talked about yet, and maybe this is or is not a beat 'em up, and that's worth discussion, but like Yakuza is like something to look at as well. And granted, like the Yakuza series has kind of jumped fully into the RPG space, right? Like they're doing Dragon Quest now, essentially. But there are still games like a Dragon Gaiden that come out that kind of try to do that sort of brawler setup, and they do have tons of RPG. I mean, I love that in that game, money is your experience, essentially. That you just level up by spending cash and buying skills and buying new equipment and stuff like that. But it does feel like that is an aspect where the RPG seeped in even heavier than before by incorporating so many of like the Shenmue elements and things like that.
Because if you just change the martial arts aspect to it, and let's just say everyone had guns, Like it would be a very different experience, but it would still be because even regular Yakuza were random battles, like on the streets. Like, you could avoid them or walk towards them, but they would initiate, and there wasn't much you can do about it. Yeah, I think that's the closest we can get to like a new if they do more guiding games or judgment games, which are the still the beat 'em up flavor. I don't think they have one announced that's coming out. I think
A Man Who Erased His Name
yeah.
Yeah.
That was the last one, but that's an interesting distinction because I often forget about that because I in my head Yakuza I just think like RPG, action RPG, but it is really beat 'em up. Like it's really River City Ransom when you think about it. You're going into shops, you're going into every recognizable Japanese chain you can think of. You're leveling up. You're eating the food. It gives you buffs.
You're getting in sauna and showing your bare ass like you do in River City Ransom.
Exactly.
Mostly big Kunio energy, big Scott Pilgrim and Kunio energy right there, where you're just fighting in the streets against random gang members who sometimes are very silly looking and all have interesting and various themes. Big art style is a big part of it. You can definitely see the DNA of the Kunio games in Yakuza in particular, and then of course Yakuza continued into, well, it was always called Like a Dragon, but you understand what I'm saying. The Like a Dragon games, which continued straight into full-on RPGs.
And we even have the reverse where Sega released that little Steam game, Streets of Kamurocho.
God about that. That was so cool.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That was really neat. I'm glad
I grabbed that. Was that like an April Fool's joke?
I think there was like 2 or 3 little projects on Steam that they had that Golden Axe reboot pitch game.
That's right.
Oh, and the like murder of Sonic the Hedgehog and stuff like that, where Sega was just having some fun, putting some stuff out there.
I don't know if it was an April Fool's thing, but they released all 3 of those around the same time frame. So, I mean, it's essentially that's just Streets of Rage, literally with Yakuza skin on the sprites. But it's still cool that it exists.
Do Musou games fit under the definition of a beat 'em up RPG? Because there's quite a few of them, including Fire Emblem, Persona 3 Strikers, the Dragon Quest games. Or is that more of a hack and slash?
Like Musou is really its own genre by this point.
Yeah.
I think Musou, I instantly think in my head, boop, what it looks like.
Because even within Musou, you noted like there's Persona 5 Strikers, which is extremely RPG, like has a lot of those elements of Persona's elemental, not triangle, but like kind of elemental weaknesses and stuff like that. And Fire Emblem uses the weapon triangle that they have and sort of like commanding units. Dragon Quest Heroes is an honestly underrated Musou game.
Yeah,
extremely fun. Has like weird tower defense elements that I really like. But then you have kind of Dynasty Warriors, which is, that is the foundation, the rock solid foundation, that has 8 games and not a 9th one. and then you get deeper into that. And I think some of like the Samurai Warriors and stuff like that get really, really complex in terms of their mechanics and what you can do with those characters, what kind of combos you're able to perform almost into a Devil May Cry situation. So Nadia, I would say that like Musou is its own subgenre at this point because it went beyond just, for the longest time it was Dynasty Warriors that was moving that forward and was keeping that on. But now other people have kind of stepped in. Other developers have kind of made their own takes on Musou or taken Musou ideas and moved them into their own games. I would argue that there's a little bit of Musou DNA in Vanillaware's 13 Sentinels because that whole tower defense thing where you're taking out just waves of enemies, that's Musou as hell to me. So I do think that Musou is its own genre, but I think if we were going to pull it out and try to like put it as a subgenre somewhere else, I would lean towards hack and slash and not beat 'em up.
Yeah,
because I do think the distinction is somehow it's like a big spectrum, right? It's like a big gradient, and it sits somewhere in there.
Contains multitudes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, and the Zelda ones are even more like elaborate and where go over here, get this item will now let you access like a Zelda game does. So when you start getting spin-offs in your own genre, then you're your own genre. Like you're not just beat 'em up at that point. And then there's like the Wii ones where you're I think isn't there a first person Muso game where you're like controlling like your Wii remote, or I might be thinking of Sengoku Basara, which is its own Muso. Really. But yeah, like Muso, I agree, is like kind of its own thing, and like the only thing I think it really shares with beat 'em ups is the instant gratification of pressing attack button, enemies die very quickly, and
smashing face.
Smashing face, exactly. Feel good,
Feel good. Feel caveman.
So as we survey the beat 'em up genre and think about their relationships with RPGs over the years, what are some of the best aspects that beat 'em ups have taken from RPGs to really enhance them? I think for me, beat 'em ups, as beautiful as they can be, can feel a little shallow at times. The absolute best ones are a lot of fun, such as Streets of Rage 4, incredible game, I have to say, probably the apex of the genre. But a lot of them, even classics like the original X-Men and Final Fight, have so much of that arcade DNA in them, so they're explicitly balanced around the idea of you're gonna die a lot. Just keep fighting until you win. Good job. RPGs can add maybe depth and nuance to them. Some of the deeper beat 'em ups have, honest to God, almost something approaching a build. And I think that beating up people in the streets is just a fun way to grind experience. What can I say? And it's a lot of fun to unlock. It's a lot of fun to unlock new abilities. Other thoughts on how RPGs enhance beat 'em ups?
I think getting choices of where to go is really fun. Like, I have a few game dev projects kind of in the fire here and there, and I really want to do something where that's like a huge element to it, like where there's several different factors as to what can lead to a new route to go through or a choice. Do you want to go here? And like when I first saw that, and I think Tower of Doom, but it might have been Shadow over Mystara, where they like, an elf tells you they need help down at their village. Will you say, no, screw you, and then just go to the cave instead?
Screw elves.
Like, yeah, like that's the choose your own adventure element getting in there. And I think that's really fun. But what you're saying, also leveling up and gaining experience and unlocking new moves, I think that's also fundamental. Like that obviously just has changes that percolate throughout the rest of the game. Like, I got a new move, or I gaining enough, experience or money, whatever it is, to buy a new move or a weapon. Like that does so much to help the genre. Like I think so many things from RPGs like help the beat 'em up get way more in depth. And I hope it happens a bit more, because like in Streets of Rage 4, when you're leveling up that big meter, you're just getting the unlocks for all the different character sprites, which is great. It's still an awesome system, but I always kind of like, hope that there's something else that like, I gain a new move, but then you have a weird balancing if you don't want to make your beat 'em up character who's at level 1 feel like they're at level 1. Then that sucks. They need to have like a decent moveset to begin with, so over that first hour or two you're not bored. So it's a different it's a hard balancing act, but it's just kind of amazing how both these genres can kind of complement each other. The only thing I can think of is there an RPG, like a traditional RPG, where its combat is beat 'em up?
Oh yeah,
Xenogears, I think.
Well, so fighting game for sure. Yeah, if we go fighting games, then we have like Xenogears, like we said, Final Fantasy VI with Saban's blitz inputs, and like Lisa the Painful also has some like complicated inputs where you're putting in kind of those motions to do attacks. So the
Legend
Tales
of Legaia.
series,
On the PlayStation, I think had that.
The Tales of series might be the closest comparison point, honestly. Yeah.
Interesting.
Right. It's Dragon Ball Z, basically.
Those like Tales of Symphonia combos, Tales of Vesperia combos get pretty intense when you're doing the juggles and stuff like that, and it definitely feels like you're playing Streets of Rage or something like that, where you're like, I was supposed to just do punch, demon fang,
I was about to say demon fang,
double demon fang. I tell this story every time, but it's funny to me every time, so I always tell it. I had a roommate in college, and I'd just gotten my old GameCube back from my house. I visited my parents over break and brought the GameCube back because I was like nostalgic for it. And I had Tales of Symphonia, and I was replaying it, and I love that game. I was thinking about this game the other day, how like quietly impactful that game was on my life. And I'm sitting there playing it, and I'm just like having the best time. My roommate just goes like, "Can you shut that game off, please? Can you just stop playing the game?" I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "All I hear all day is just Demon Fang, Demon Fang, Demon Fang. I've learned a new attack. Double Demon Fang."
Demon Fang.
Double Demon Fang. Oh, damn. Now we're cooking.
That's one of my favorite like meme videos is one of them going like, Demon Fang, Demon Fang. I figured it out. Double Demon Fang.
I think
Demon Fang.
with fighting games and RPGs, one thing I kind of want to bring up, rather beat 'em ups and RPGs. I like the fact that one of the reasons I loved RPGs as a kid is that I was kind of sucked at action games and RPGs. As long as you were willing to put the work in, you could get stronger. Mm-hmm. So I always I like that combination you could get in certain games. Like I said earlier, I never played River City Ransom as a kid, which surprised me. But Shadows of Mystara, I love the fact that you could get stronger, you could get better magic, you could get better weapons. That was an important one, because in an RPG, it's always like, oh, which sword should I equip? Holy crap, screw this crappy sword. I got a big sword now. And you get that feeling from games like Dragon's Crown or Shadow over Mystara. So, yeah, that's a pretty good addition to any side-scrolling beat-em-up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're also forgetting... I know that there are people who are screaming at their podcast right now because we are forgetting the apex of the genre, the greatest combination of RPG elements and beat 'em up elements ever put to a console. And of course, that game is The Bouncer.
Oh, I never touched that. I gotta play that someday.
Of course.
There's very few RPG mechanics in it other than watching long cutscenes, really.
What's more RPG than watching long cutscenes?
Find Nomura, no less.
I did a video on it a little while ago about its development, and it's really a shame where it's like the game was going to have more stuff.
Right.
More things to interact with, and like you could smash through tables and all of these things, and it's like just because of a confluence of events, they just couldn't get all that stuff working on the PS2 around that time. And I'm like, oh, that'd been so cool. And it's like, even though like the core game isn't like great, like the core gameplay isn't great, it's still, and there's no like co-op. There's no co-op in this story, which is still mind-boggling to me. That if Square were to ever re-release it with like quality of life improvements, or like God forbid make a sequel, like people would around the world applaud for that, because even though they even though they don't remember, even though they may remember it not being great, but they still have nostalgic memories of like, but these characters were so cool because we're all infected by the Nomura mind virus of like 2001 2002 of like
these, got us in the end.
Yeah, just these characters are too cool for school, and you want to see them do more stuff. And the idea has so much more potential. Like, because I'd love to play a beat 'em up with really long RPG like cutscenes nowadays, as long as they're compelling. I mean, Yakuza kind of has that too, but it's mostly just like conversations. It's not like big giant set pieces happening all the time. But they should definitely re-release The Bouncer in some form or another. But everyone keeps telling me it's like, oh, they can't do that because the combat required the pressure sensitivity of the PS2 sticks. And that's why. And I'm like,
can you not do that now? I mean, doesn't the DualSense have something similar to that?
Or it was based on how hard you press the face buttons. I can't remember if it's the sticks or the face buttons, but you get a harder
the original Street Fighter, they had to do it again.
Oh, so yeah. Like face button sensitivity would make sense, because that was a big thing for Metal Gear Solid at the time, right? Was that like you kind of like soft pressed and then hard pressed on that game? So that would make sense. That would line up.
Yeah. But then it's just have a modifier button where you hold down the modifier button, then you press the attack, and then like I don't know. There's ways you can figure it out, but I don't think Square's really interested in The Bouncer.
I do have to state that in
They
the
should
chat,
be.
people are going nuts, and we have to mention so that way we can, make our mods happy. Legend of Mana is also getting screamed at us. So
Legend of Mana.
Mm-hmm.
This is more of a Nadia joint.
No, it isn't. I didn't like it. Oh, is that Adventures of Mana? I can't remember which Mana is Mana anymore. Like,
so much mana.
too many Manas.
Chat's going like Mana, and all of us are like, no.
My 5 Manas.
Amazing. Well, what's your favorite beat 'em up? We want to know. Please send us a message. Talk to us over on twitch.tv/bloodgodpod, etc. That's our discussion of fighting games, or RPGs and beat 'em ups. I wrote fighting games and beat 'em ups, also very related genres. But now it's time for a series of random encounters. Dragon Age: The Veilguard officially has a release date and a new trailer. It will be out October 31st, making it the spookiest RPG. The Switch, on the other hand, will not release before April 2025, much to the dismay of Nintendo fans all over the place. I've been kind of on the record of saying that I think that it's going to be out in the fall, maybe with a new Mario game. 2025 is going to be pretty wild, y'all. Another release date, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, delayed to February 11th, 2025. We had hoped that it would be out this year, or they thought it would be out this year, but alas, it is not to be, so it'll be out next February. Owlcat Games is getting into the publishing business. You would know them as the developers of Warhammer Rogue Trader, among other games. And they're making an isometric RPG called Rue Valley, which is all about traveling through time and seeing the results of your actions. How very RPG of them to do that.
Looking back saying, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. The RPG.
Tango Gameworks is alive after all.
Yes.
Yay.
As Crafton steps in to buy the Hi-Fi Rush studio. And finally, rest in peace to Pokemon voice actress Rachel Lillis, who died at the age of 55. She was the voice of Misty, Jigglypuff, and Jessie in Pokemon, as well as several characters in Valkyrie Profile, most notably Mistina. We lost you too soon. You will be missed. Okay, time now to head into the tavern, to sit down by the fire, talk about what we have been playing. Matt, you're a special guest. What the heck have you been playing and or watching or doing outside of making YouTube videos?
I have been playing and really enjoying Dungeons of Hinterberg, which is action RPG that released. I think it's on Game Pass, but Steam, and Steam as well. I don't think it's on PlayStation systems, but that has been such a fun, cozy, non-stressful action RPG, but it still has some harder elements to it. It's basically like a mix of Zelda, Persona, and with a really nice, clean, cel-shaded art style, and like a lot of Europeanness, because it takes place in the Alps, and you meet all the characters. Everyone talks about euros, or sorry, no, they talk about hinterbucks. It's basically crusty. It's basically crusty bucks, itchy and scratchy bucks.
It's like money, but more fun.
Yeah, no, a mayor literally comes and says, you got to spend hinterbucks. It's like euros, but more fun. So yeah, you plan out your day between like the morning, the afternoon, and the night. And then you say like, oh, I'm going to go explore a dungeon, because going into dungeons is like skiing. It's a vacation that you do because they've capitalized on it. So there's a whole industry that's sprung up around slaying, which it's called. And even though it's very like breezy to play through and there's not much going on in the story, then halfway through things start like, this town isn't exactly what it seems like it's going to be. So I usually get up and play that for about an hour or two every day, and just, it's been really, really fun.
Cool.
I highly recommend it, because each dungeon world that you go into has its own set of magic attacks, so you always have like a bunch at your disposal, but never not at one time. They get
Right.
swapped in and swapped out as you go, so it really keeps things fresh. And I was playing something else recently along with that. No, I guess that's been the main thing. And I've been doing an Alien marathon with my wife, watching the entire series up until we're going to see
Ooh.
Alien Romulus tonight, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Oh.
So
I read the summary of Alien Romulus because I like the Alien movies, but I have a hard time actually watching them because there's so much body horror going on in them. And after I read the summary, I was like, interesting. I'm not watching this.
a good one to watch is AVP1 because there's no horror in it because there's no violence in it at all, and the one body horror scene is like it doesn't even really show anything. So
whoever wins, we lose.
Alien Covenant is by far the worst of the franchise to me personally. Just watching that again last night, I was just like, it's all these characters, they're all so very stupid, and every decision they make, I don't get it. How come this evil guy lets everyone just walk through his facility where all his incriminating evidence is? How come this is happening? Why is this happening? And it's just, I get it. They were trying to course correct after Prometheus. They're like, oh, people want aliens. We need to give them aliens. And they just didn't do a very good job of it. So I'm excited to see where Romulus will wind up on that. But yeah, me and my wife enjoyed that this week. Alien still really holds up, and Alien 3 aged a bit better than I remember.
That's not bad.
Yeah, and Tywin Lannister being much younger in that. He's like a super hottie. Like, he's like 40 in that movie, and I'm like, whoa, Tywin Lannister. Wow, okay. So that was really interesting. But yeah, that's me.
Or Nadia, I went and had a drink recently with our friend Reb and our old pal Matt Olson from US Gamer.
Oh, how's he doing?
Heck yes.
Yeah, he's doing great. He's traveling the world, being Matt. The reason I mentioned that is because they were playing Aliens on the screen in the bar, and I couldn't stop watching it. It was hypnotic. That is a great action movie. James Cameron really at the top of his game, I have to say. I like it probably even more than Terminator 2. Even though I really struggle with the facehugger stuff, I enjoy Aliens a lot.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Cameron. I think Avatar is stupid and boring, but I appreciate his love for the sea and the creepiness of just life in general, the universe, and everything.
Here's the thing about Avatar. It is one of the best-selling franchises ever. Everybody goes to see it, and I don't know why. Like, people turn up for this thing, and it fascinates me that so many people are putting money into this thing, but nobody seems to love it that way. And so I keep maybe that's like what works about it, is everybody is like showing up being like, why do you love this? Well, I'm here to figure out why you love this.
People are searching for it. When I write Avatar stories, it does traffic. There are people who are excited about Avatar. I think it's called Fire and Water or something like that. So
yeah, but at the same time, I ran an experiment where I actually looked at Archive of Our Own for Avatar, James Cameron Avatar fan fiction.
An experiment,
it's a very small amount. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, as you say, Eric, someone is out there. Maybe the normies love Avatar. I don't know. All I can think of.
That's how it was explained to me. I wrote a tweet a while back, and just saying, like, Avatar made all this money, like the second one. I don't see anyone ever talking about Avatar on just my personal timeline. I'm just going by what I'm seeing. And then people have kind of said, like, yeah, me neither. It's because all normies go to see it because they're like, oh, this is the big, cool, geeky event thing to do. But like a good chunk, not saying all, obviously, but a good chunk of like everyone that's into geek culture and video games and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not like a huge percentage that go to see Avatar, so you don't see it across your own timelines as much, but everyone else is kind of doing it. And then like, they're huge technical achievements, like they look so amazing, like I can never take that away, but you know, the actors and the cast and the just generalness of the stories, like they're so formulaic in kind of what ideas they're presenting and things, but the action is, you know, so amazingly shot and all that. I'm still shocked by the fact that Cameron like said this week, yeah, I'm making a new Terminator project. Just drop that all of a sudden.
He said it a
Wait,
little
what?
while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, he said it a little while ago, but then he said it again, like just this week. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm working on something." And it's just like, okay,
Maybe it'll be good.
Go you.
The last few Terminators have been pretty bad.
Yeah.
I hope that anime that comes out on Judgment Day this month is good. That Netflix anime.
Can we just erase everything but Terminator 1, 2, and maybe the Sarah Connor Chronicles?
3 had that scene where he's holding the coffin and shooting a bunch of stuff, and I think we can
This is correct.
That. Yeah,
this is very correct. It was so radical looking. I saw it in the trailer. I was like, "Yo, Terminator 3, let's go!" And then you watch the rest of the movie, but
everything else we can pass on, but we'll keep that scene.
Yeah.
I'll always love that Terminator 2 is all about no fate but what we make, and then Terminator 3 was like, actually, Judgment Day is inevitable. You are fated to be having this happen to you. Sorry.
I gotta say, that Terminator 2 still has one of the best nuke scenes you'll see in a movie, and that was all practical effects. Like, dang.
Yeah, I usually use that clip of Sarah Connor
blowing apart skeletons, screaming.
I think I edited like Tails in Sonic Adventure 2 dropping like a bomb, and then it cuts to like Sarah Connor just going, ah.
It sounds like a very 2000s internet thing to do.
It was, yeah, for sure.
I can't understate how intense and scary that entire scene was in the 1990s. It still freaks me out to this day. I think it's probably the most visceral depiction of what it's like to be in an atomic blast that I've ever seen put to screen. So
there was some story, I think, where it said like nuclear physicists or experts on the matter said they watched the scene. It was either at the time it was filmed or much later, where they said, yeah, this is as accurate as you could possibly make
everyone kind of catching on fire then blowing apart. That's pretty much what happened.
And what's funny I was talking to my wife about this last night, because after we watched an Alien movie, I looked at like this old retro commercial that was released. Someone put it on a Twitter account. And it was like Alien versus Predator action figures. The Queen comes with her oozing playset.
I
remember that. It drops a bunch of ooze on a Predator, and then some kid goes, ooze 'em. It just reminded me of the Terminator 2 action figures that I was allowed to buy and purchase and play with, but I was not allowed to go see the movie. So when I saw the movie like several years later when it was released on VHS, because my parents wouldn't allow me to go to the theater, I had these action figures and I would just try to make up my own Terminator storylines. Like the front panel of Arnold's like Terminator like pops off and it's like an endoskeleton underneath. And I'm like, radical. And then I actually saw the movie and I was, scarred by it.
Scarred for life.
Not for life, but for like a year, because some of the visuals were so horrifying. Just the T-1000 killing the T-1000 killing John Connor's Foster. He has like the blade in his mouth and he's like he was just trying to drink some milk. Why can't he do that? Like, he's not a great foster dad. I'll give him that, Todd. But I when I saw it, I was like, I can't believe they sold some Playmates. Said like, yeah, we should market this to kids with action.
They did that
figures.
to RoboCop too.
It was the 90s.
There were the RoboCop toys.
It was a horrifying movie to watch.
They had NES games,
and then the RoboCop cartoon. There were like 2 cartoon shows.
Bring the melting man into the Robo cartoon. Come on, do it, you cowards. Can you imagine?
I saw RoboCop on cable in the mid 1990s or something, and I just happened to turn it on to the melting man, and I had nightmares for weeks. I swear to God.
But when he hits the windshield and it's just so funny.
I was just like,
But I really want the melting man to be a recurring character where no one ever helps him or brings him to a hospital. He's just always melting.
He's too far gone. I don't think a hospital can do anything for him.
He just has to live with it. He's just got
to bath and toxic waste.
Sorry, dude, got a deal.
And he has to find like a melting wife and they have melting kids together,
That's horrifying.
That's just your brand now.
Yeah. You gotta live with it. This is your lot in life. Melting Man, or like Evil Doctor from ER season like 1 to 3. Same actor. I hate that doctor. I'm glad he's
the same actor.
Yeah.
Great. People on TikTok Did you see the Melting Man reels? They're really good, actually.
Hey, I was playing RoboCop 2, the arcade game. RoboCop 2, the Melting Man is just included in that as a boss fight.
Really?
He just shows up.
Really? That is so cool. But he wasn't in the second one, was he?
No, he was not at all. He was super because of the car.
His molecule
kind of
scattered.
Someone had said that they believe that the Japanese team that was assigned to make this were given like a very proto, not finished version of the RoboCop 2 script, so it only had huge chunks where it wasn't about the movie at all. So they just said, "What do we put as a boss here?" And Melting Man, So
that's cool. That's a good idea. He's back. Oh, God hates us. That's why.
You know what would make great RPGs? Terminator, Alien, and RoboCop. But when I think back on them, we've had shooters. There was a RoboCop game that came out last year. There were very Alien versus Predators games. There was an Alien game that was a little Diablo-esque, but more of
dark. I believe that's Dark Descent. I had some people recommend me play that.
But there was also the Fire Team game. I always get them mixed up in my head. The Fire Team Elite, and then they always focus on the Space Marines when they should really be focusing on the Alien. It's much more fun to be. You start as a face hugger, and then you hatch, and then you level up into the Xenomorph, and then you just keep getting more and more powerful, and then you build your hive. It's like Stardew Valley, but with alien parasites.
See what
Alien AVP Extinction. That's the StarCraft game that was only released on consoles. And I think that you do have to level up your units in that way. Like for the Alien Hive, you like start off with facehuggers, and then you get, the runners, and you get like the warriors. And every time I play it, I can't even make a video on it because the tutorial is like an hour long, and it's play an RTS on a controller, and not like a streamlined RTS on a controller like some smart people have done. No, they're like, this is a full super complicated one on a controller. I can never do it.
Move that controller cursor.
The joystick is your mouse stick. Now.
Yes. Eric, what have you been watching and or playing?
This was obviously charity week planning for me, so I wasn't doing a lot of playing. I've played some Visions of Mana, and I can really just say that I played a little bit of it, and it certainly like lives up to everything I talked about before on the podcast. It's very comfort food. It's very chill. But Kat, I gotta blame you for something. You like 40%, and friend of the show John Carson 60%. I've been playing Magic the Gathering Arena.
Oh no, don't do that.
Oh, it's over.
It's over.
I don't know if y'all have heard of this game called Magic the Gathering, but it's like a good time. It's a really good time. It's like the best way to chill and decompress after a long day. So I will literally dual monitor Magic the Gathering on one side and then like some anime on the other side. So I've been rewatching Hunter x Hunter on
Is that
on
why you're
monitors.
late? Like the other night you were watching Hunter x Hunter.
Late?
Were you playing Magic the Gathering?
No, at that time I was only watching Hunter x Hunter and eating my dinner. I was not watching Hunter x Hunter and playing Magic the Gathering. Okay. But I was watching Hunter x Hunter. But yeah, no, I think I'd always thought, and I still kind of feel this way, is that Magic the Gathering turns over really fast. So like we're on Bloomborough right now, right? And that's like the fun magical red wall thing, and I'm really excited about it.
Yay.
I love this
I'm
set.
never leaving it.
It's really fun to play. I made a draft. And it was all bats. So it was like black white bat deck, and all the bats just had all these cool moves that were about like discarding cards and making your I love making somebody discard cards. It's really fun. I don't know if you've ever tried this.
I hate that. Life. Oh my god. I have an aggro deck, and there's somebody who will just come in and it'll be like, discard that, discard that, discard that. Oh, you don't have a hand anymore. Sorry, your aggro's dead. And I'm just like, I just wanted to kill you.
I love doing it because you look at somebody and they've got like 5 cards in their hand, and you're like, you got to discard 2 of those. And you watch them as they're like doing math in their head of like, well, I need this land, so I can't like get rid of the land. I don't know if I'll draw into it, but I really need this card for my game plan. I'm just like, my game plan is making you not have fun anymore. It's making you dislike this game. So that worked really well.
Card games, am I right?
But yeah, no, I think the thing that is maybe going to ultimately hold me back from getting deeper into MTG is just that, like, it's going to turn over more, so more sets are going to come out, more stuff is going to come out. And I know there's like a standard.
That's why I dropped off Hearthstone.
Yeah.
At a certain point, I just couldn't keep up anymore.
Yeah, and they turn around fast in Magic. Like, I think the next set is coming up soon, within like a month or two. Yeah.
Yeah. But we can just stay with Bloomburrow forever, right? We've reached peak Magic.
That's what we got to do. We just got to say forever Bloomburrow. That's where we are. That's where we live now. This is us now. But yeah, no, I do enjoy the like mechanics of Magic the Gathering. It is fun. And then Hunter x Hunter makes for like the perfect just rewatch and re-enjoy all of that. How have we not had a Hunter x Hunter RPG yet? That's crazy to me. Like, Hunter x Hunter is perfect for it.
Into an RPG. Though, if I had to pick one anime to turn into an RPG, aside from, I don't know, Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is already in Super Robot Wars, I would probably pick Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which would be a fantastic game to put all of the different state alchemists into one party. That would be a lot of fun.
Kat, I've got great news for you. There are Full Metal Alchemist RPGs in Japan only that have been fan translated, and I've messed around with
Are they like
them.
on PS2? I remember a bunch of them came out.
There's one on GBA, and that's the one that I was toying around with.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Wow. I have to check it out.
It's all right. It's fine.
I would love a Berserk RPG.
Oh,
because
all Berserk is an RPG.
All Berserk games are just action
play Dark
games.
Souls.
Or I know.
Let me tell you about Elden Ring.
But I mean like a turn-based, because you can have a pretty good party where you have your melee guy, obviously Guts. You have like a magic user. You like a whole party could be constructed pretty easily, and every game is just your Guts all the time. Like, that's great, but I would, there's other cool characters as well. I'm just saying.
I think
Dungeon Meshi honestly would be great.
That I was gonna say, like, it's funny to sit here and be like, I'd love Dungeon Meshi as an RPG, and I'm like, wait, that's just like boiling it back down to wizardry, which is what like inspired so much of it. It's really funny that so many, especially modern anime, are taking a lot of inspiration from Baldur's Gate, wizardry, Neverwinter Nights. Like, Ryoko Kui, who is the writer of Dungeon Meshi, does a bunch of art of like Pathfinder characters and stuff like that, because she's just into that stuff. And then Frieren is basically just like a new RPG journey. It's a new game plus story. So I love this era of anime that we're in, where everybody is wearing their inspirations on their sleeve so brazenly.
Matt, just mentioning Dungeon Meshi made me think randomly of something. Did you ever play Dungeon Fighters Online, returning to the original topic?
The actual like game, I think I played it for like 10 minutes on a friend's PC, like maybe 10 years ago. Who's really into it. One of like
the most successful brawler MMOs ever, I suppose.
I don't know how it took us until now to bring it up, because it absolutely fits that mold of what we're talking about. I played a fair amount of DNF Duel. I mean, that's the fighting game, but like, it's kind of a different thing. But like, it's always been this like in the background, like mega success. And now like in the mainstream in the West, while it hasn't reached like this like, level of popularity yet, like across the world, and in like Asian countries, like it's like a juggernaut, and like still going on strong. Like what, like the last 20 years, maybe more? I can't remember when it started.
It's like the peak expression of grinding by beating people up in a game.
Definitely.
Best way to do things.
With microtransactions. Gotta love it. Nadia, how about you? What have you been playing and or watching?
I've actually been playing SteamWorld Heist 2.
Yeah.
Oh, are you liking it?
Yeah, it's much harder than the first one, but yeah, it's still great. I mean, what's that?
Is it like much harder?
Not much harder, but it is significantly more difficult.
It's definitely challenging. Like, I wouldn't say it's like impossibly tough, but it did feel like a lot of those missions early on kind of encourage you to maybe come back and perfect them later when you have better equipment or things to do that with. Yeah, it definitely is. There are times where you have to really like risk it to get the biscuit. And
Risk it to get the biscuit.
yeah, but it works. Like there's something about that game where I feel like
It
I'm
does.
always on the razor edge. You know, you're always just like one step ahead of the law. That really really works.
Yeah, it's like they give you just one less character than you need for each stage, and that really kind of makes
Yes.
things challenging. I have done and redone several stages, and there are like a bunch of difficult. Like they make it easy so that you can customize difficulty however you want, and which is really great. They have a lot of options. So I am enjoying it very much, but I'm definitely getting through it slower than I did the first one. The first game felt easier, but this definitely feels more challenging, not in a bad way. So I love the class changing system, which is really interesting. I wish you leveled up a bit faster. I think maybe that's my only complaint, but I just got an upgrade that lets me level up faster, so I'll probably be all right after this. It does feel like one of those games that is very front loaded for difficulty. It does get a bit better, easier as you recruit characters and build up their skills. Also, I love the SteamWorld universe. It's just such a great universe.
Oh, the
It is
SteamWorld
really
universe
nice,
is so
isn't it?
fun. Yeah.
It's I love what it does in terms of the games. Like every game you play has a spot in the canon, but you go from like the distant past to the far future, and in this point it's like we are after the first SteamWorld heist, and the planet that blew up is now people living on the shards. So it's not like everything died. It's because I always wondered, okay, how are they going to continue the story after everything blew up? And this is how they're doing it. And you're living on a ocean shard, and it's just really neat. I love the world building.
I understand why they shifted to a pirate theme, but I miss the Firefly theme, is all I'm saying.
The Firefly, yeah, there is a lot more of like personal agency over what you can do. It's not like as nearly as linear as the first game was. Like you can dick around a lot on that map. That map reminds me of Donkey Kong Country 3's map.
Yes.
Which is so underrated. Such a great map. Very much the same thing going on.
You know, it'd be an amazing RPG.
Donkey Kong Country 3.
No, Firefly. I would play the heck out of a Firefly RPG.
Why don't we just have a Cowboy Bebop RPG?
Starfield should have been the Firefly RPG. Didn't quite get there.
Starfield should have been a lot of things, Kat.
Yeah, one of my top 10 games of 2023.
I'm not going to miss an opportunity. Yeah, I'm not going to miss a shot.
I'm undermining myself by being like, oh yeah, I played that game. I played a lot of that game. I finished that game. I am looking forward to the Shattered Space expansion this fall, and I will play it. I'll just keep playing that game until it gets good. I'm telling you.
I rented Fiddler on the Roof, and I will watch it. Anyway,
I am determined to enjoy this game.
Good for you, Kat.
I'm gonna love it.
I appreciate your drive.
Thank you. Well, I haven't talked about it in a while, but I did want and offer a Persona 3 Reload update. As some of you know, I've been doing a This Week in GeckoCon style playthrough. I started back in April, and while I haven't been talking about it that much because sometimes there's just nothing much that happens in a week. For example, right now we're in the middle of summer vacation in the game, so it'll just say, you're on vacation. What do you want to do? Or final exams are this week. We're just going to run straight through the week. But plenty has happened since I last provided a Persona 3 Reload update. Now when I go into the Tartarus, there are these crazy red doors that I can go into with optional bosses. And game time wise, I'm about 25 hours into Persona 3 Reload. So it makes sense that it continues to introduce new content, but I find it kind of delightful that I'm several months in at this point in, I suppose, in the game. And I feel like I'm constantly discovering new things. Also, I have almost a full party. I added Aegis. I added Koromaru. I have a very full party at this point, and I'm enjoying all of the variety. The super attacks that you can do do make the boss fights a lot easier than I think they were in the original game, which I don't hate, actually, because I could see some of the boss fights being a smidge tedious without it, and I think that they add a lot of punch to it. But so far, it's been a really joyful experience, I think, to play all the way through Persona 3 Reload. I did I just did the summer festival, and I went with Mitsuru and Aegis rather than one of the people that I've been talking to, and I always like a good fish out of the water. What is this? What's going on? What is takoyaki? Oh my gosh.
So, I can go over some of that right now. I'm hungry.
Matt, did you ever play Persona 3 Reload or any of the Persona games, really?
Yeah, some of them, not Persona 3 Reload. I did have sort of related. I did have a great conversation doing a little project with a few people. It's not an announced project yet, but one of the people I collaborated with was Alex Lee, who is the voice of the protagonist in the dub of Persona 3 Reload. And he's really super cool. So it was fun to hang out. We talked about Persona like a little bit before we started doing what we were doing. But I generally, is Persona 3 Reload considered like a good remake? Because I haven't heard that much.
Mostly. I've had complaints, but generally there are things missing. Like I think you can't play as a female, for example.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
That would be
fancy.
Nice.
The answer got like split out too, which
there's kind of a cringe segment in the original Persona where you're on a beach during the summer vacation, and I did this one last month where Junpei wants to go and find all the ladies, and all the boys are very awkwardly hitting on people. And in the original game, there's a little bit of trans panic when you encounter a particular woman. In this one, they changed it, so she's more of a kooky conspiracy theorist. And I have to say, given Persona's fairly checkered past with gay panic and trans panic, this is a really good improvement. And I think in that respect, in most respects, Persona 3 Reload is easily the defining version of this particular game. It's hard for me to imagine, even with being able to play as a female MC in Persona 3 Portable, it's hard for me to imagine going back. The other thing that I did, and since we have Matt on here and we have Nadia, a little bit of Canadian culture for all of you.
I know all about this culture.
Oh, yeah. I was in Edmonton this past week, and I was like, wow, Edmonton. I've never been here before. What's going on? Unfortunately, there are wildfires going on in Edmonton right now. So the air
we're either drowning or burning. Depends on what side of Canada you're on. We're in the drowning side. We're on the sixth umbral calamity right now.
I was on the burning side of things, but I had a little bit of time, so I went and saw the West Edmonton Mall.
Yay! Mall.
Which was a big deal for me because when I was growing up, I grew up about 10 minutes away from the Mall of America. And it was a big deal when it opened up. But everybody would always say, well, it's one of the biggest malls in America, but it's not necessarily the biggest mall in America, because I think the West Edmonton Mall in Canada is actually bigger than it, don't you know? Like, what?
How's that possible?
The Mall of America is the biggest and the best.
America.
So, it's America. It says Mall of America. There's a place for fun in your life. Mall of America. So I was in Edmonton, and I had to see this competitor to the Mall of America. So I went to the West Edmonton Mall, and I have to say, fair play, Canada. Yours does have a pirate ship and a hockey rink.
Of course.
So those are two things the Mall of America doesn't have. It also had a water park, an indoor water park. And I really wanted to buy a swimming suit and go onto a lazy river or something within it. Nice. So
Canada has weirdly, like, I don't know if you can say this for Montreal, Matt, but our malls are surviving just fine. And I think maybe because our weather is so cold for so much of the year. But I live within walking rough biking distance of 2 malls, and they're both doing just fine. Part of it is because they have really good anchor stores. The rest of them all might be dead, but they have, like, say, Canadian Tire, and that alone will carry them all pretty easily.
Yeah, ours are kind of like, it depends where you are. If you're like in the suburbs, like this one will be doing well, this one will not be doing well. In downtown, there's a bunch of malls the Eaton Center. There's one in Toronto as well. Those are all underground, so in the winter, it's like everyone just goes under there, and you can go through several blocks, like a dozen blocks or so underground through these malls and get to where you're going without being topside, and take like freeze damage from like the winters that we have.
So does Montreal have a lot of underground like Toronto?
Yeah, no, it does, absolutely.
Because Toronto has like 20 kilometers underground. It's just all of downtown Toronto is there. Now, of course, now we're getting a ton of rain. It's fantastic. But anyway,
In Minneapolis, they have skyways, and I thought, wow, it's because it's to protect people from the cold. No, it's because of racism, actually. It's because they wanted to revitalize the downtown by introducing these special skyways that white-collar workers could go through, so they didn't have to be on the street with everybody else who are kind of undesirable. And I was
hamster tunnels.
Why do you got to be racist, Minneapolis? That disappoints me. But there was a really good report on it, I think, NPR or something to that effect. So go check it out. But West Edmonton Mall, had a good time in it, would go again, had multiple food carts. So
that's how you know you're swank, is when you have multiple food carts.
Multiple food
and like 20 Tim Hortons.
All right, that's it for the tavern. Nadia, take us home.
Well, since we're talking about malls and arcades, there was actually a really good tweet on Twitter about like where was your arcade experience? And as I said earlier, arcades were kind of thriving when I was younger, but they're not the kind of place where your parents wanted you to go. And I don't know how many like actual collective dedicated arcades Toronto had. Again, my parents didn't really let me slum around them, but there is a mall. I'm looking at it right now at my window because it's slowly growing. Matt, you've been in Toronto, right?
Yeah, several times.
Are you familiar with Yorkdale Mall in the north?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, it's growing and growing and continually growing. But anyway, it used to be a time when it was my major hangout spot. I had most of my jobs there. I did work there as a janitor. But there was a really great arcade in the food court once upon a time. And I'm thinking back to this food court. That's where I got most of my exposure to games. And you would think, oh, okay, food court has, I don't know, a broken-ass bubble machine in the corner somewhere. Mm-hmm. But no, they kept it like really up to date. Like that was the first time I saw Street Fighter Alpha. It's the first time I saw Street Fighter 3. Even going way back, they had like the Simpsons Arcade, they had X-Men, like the full consoles and everything like that. They had Mega Man the Power Fighters, not Power Battle.
Wow!
Not the second one, the first one. The second one you couldn't find anywhere.
Super rare.
But yeah, it was still pretty rare. And I'm like, being a Mega Man fan, I'm like, holy shit, there's a Mega Man fighting game, and I just went bananas, especially because this game in particular was 25 cents, and it was not very hard, so you could finish it. And weirdly enough, the Power Fighter / Power Battle game that followed, there's a lot of story canon in there for Mega Man fans that is not touched in the main games. Like, this is the first time you see Dr. Wily saying, hey, I'm making this robot. It's obviously Zero, but it's over here. And this was an arcade game. But it was a really fun arcade, just kind of discover things and discover like my first games. I did work at Canada's Wonderland, which is where I really picked up my Street Fighter Alpha 3 addiction, because they had those, days where they'd be like, hey, everyone come in and play whatever you want. Unfortunately, arcades in amusement parks were really good for the most part. Canada's Wonderland had several. But the thing is, when you go to an amusement park, your parents aren't going to take you to the arcade because you're going to be paying separate for the machines. They're going to be like, screw you, I'm already paying enough for your goddamn rides. Let's go. Right. So I did get to play when I worked there because we had those free nights. But yeah, that was my main arcade experience, and it was an interesting one because, as I said, there's no reason for it to be that robust, but it was.
How about you, Matt?
So I mentioned the one that I went to for a birthday party, but that wasn't like my education per se. There was one in downtown Montreal called, I'm trying to remember. It wasn't because I remember several names, but this one I don't remember its name. But it was in like this little alcove, and it was next to like a bar, which I was like too scared to go into. So yeah, it was during my high school days, and it was 2 floors, and it was very, very narrow. It's like on either side there's like 2 rows of arcades, and there's just enough room for you to like walk through. And upstairs were like the older games. So there was like Killer Instinct 2, Mace the Dark Age, maybe Street Fighter Alpha 2, something like that. And the front, they had the newer games. So Soul Calibur had come out, and a few other Street Fighter 3. They had the Spawn game by Capcom, which I love, the deathmatch one. Love that. And that's where I like started to be around so much that I would see the same people over and over again. And because you're in the downtown area and you're not even like far away from like the financial buildings like banks and stuff, the primary arcade goers were old men in their 50s. And I had names for them because I'm like, that's Cowboy, that's Moneybags, that's like the smoker, blah, blah, blah. And Cowboy, who wore a literal cowboy hat, was super good at Soul Calibur. Like, you could see all the weapons on the lower part of the screen of all the people he's beaten in versus so far, because it would show everyone's like weapon sets that he's beaten a Killick, he's beaten a Mitsurugi, blah, 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 blah. And it was always like my quest, like I got to beat Cowboy at least in a match or two. And I think I did eventually, but it took a long road to get there. But yeah, it's where most of my arcade memories. I think a few miles down the street there was one other arcade which I do remember, Amusement 2000, and that's when I first saw Capcom versus SNK 1, and that's when I was maybe a block or two away from it. I was hanging out with friends or getting lunch, and someone who I vaguely knew came up to me and says, they have it, and I go, what, they have what? And he just grabs me and he brings me and shows me Capcom versus SNK 1. Wow. And that game's attack mode said, everyone rumored but nobody believed, now you see it's true. And your mind just melted, because this is like 2000 internet penetration.
It was not very good.
Not very good. So I didn't even know this was being developed. So when I saw it, I thought it was like a joke game. Like I thought it was just like showing an animation. There wasn't an actual game to play. So that was like a big arcade memory for me, seeing that for the first time.
That would be so cool.
Game being completely invalidated by Capcom versus SNK 2 the next year or so. But still, like, precious memories for me.
Yeah, it was extremely confusing for me when, as a Street Fighter 2 fan, to go into the arcade and see Charlie alive and well playing Street Fighter. I'm like, Charlie, you're supposed to be dead.
Yeah.
Why are you alive?
No one stays dead in Street Fighter.
This is a joke game.
Yeah.
Arcades were a big deal for me throughout my life. They're one of my absolute favorite places to be. When I was growing up, there was a Circus Pizza, which used to be a Chuck E. Cheese, but they renamed it Circus Pizza. And it had still all of the old animatronics and everything. They just kept all that stuff because Chuck E. Cheese had gone bankrupt by that point. But they had a big screen with Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition and a little island that you could all play. That was how big a deal Street Fighter 2 was at the time. We also had a place called Grand Slam that had laser tag and batting cages and a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and X-Men beat 'em up machines. And then when I got somewhat older, I moved to Japan, and I spent a lot of time in game centers when I was in Japan. Yeah. I had several of my favorites. In Persona 5, if you go to the Shibuya, you'll see a shop that says game. That was my arcade in Japan. It was this 5-story amazing place where you would have retro games on the bottom, and then you would have DDR, you would have the DDR floor, you would have the Gundam floor, you would have the Tekken floor, you would have the Street Fighter floor, you would have the horse racing floor, because there was always a gambling/horse racing floor. And the games were always half of it as expensive as you would find anywhere else in any other game center, and it was always packed. And during the day, it would all be the school kids, the high school kids, hanging out and playing the games. And then in the evening, it would be all the salary workers, like all the office workers would come in, and they would all be smoking, and you would barely be able to breathe. And they all had a very distinct musk, because it was a lot of old dudes smoking
and drinking
while playing video games. And here I was being like, I want to play Gundam. And this was where I really, my Gundam fandom, I suppose, developed, was playing tons and tons and tons of Gundam Versus while I was living in Japan.
While inhaling cigarette smoke.
While inhaling so much cigarette smoke.
Were the kids supposed to be in school, or were they just after school? Were they
would finish school, and they would go to the local game center where there would be a lunchtime, or they just weren't going to school for some reason and playing hooky. You never know. Maybe they were the bad kids, the kinds that would end up being in River City Ransom.
The ones who do the grok
This is what
squats.
the hot-blooded Kunio-kun was all about. The kids who were going to go play Gundam Versus in the arcades when they should be in school. But there is an arcade actually quite near my house called High Scores, and it has a number of really cool custom cabinets, including a Smash Brothers Melee cabinet. Yeah, Eric and I went there, and we played a whole bunch of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, and I'm happy to report that I just absolutely bodied Eric. He could not.
Of course you did. I would have played games.
Cat's bringing this up.
Die.
Kat's bringing this up because she doesn't want to relive the Soul Calibur SmackDown
it's
that
true.
happened.
The Soul Calibur SmackDown is a good description of it. Yeah, Eric really got me in Soul Calibur, which is nominally my game. So I got him in his game, and he got me in my game. It was a little weird.
I don't know. My own arcade history was pretty short because, like, you know, by the time I was growing up, it was already kind of like going by the wayside. But Tekken and Soul Calibur, Tekken especially, was like the stuff that grabbed me. I remember Tekken Tag being a huge thing when I was in like elementary school and stuff like that, going into middle school. We would play tons of Tekken Tag. But I do have a very weird specific memory of the arcade underneath the movie theater at my local mall, because it was like a 2-floor situation, and the bottom floor had the arcade in it. We went there, and it had a Sonic fighting game, and I'd never seen a Sonic fighting game before, and I played as that the cowboy guy with the guns and stuff. I just like ran that machine for an hour or two, and that is my one experience with the Sonic fighting game. And then it came back in like a recent like a Dragon game or whatever, and I was like, oh, so this wasn't just like a fever dream I had when I was young. This wasn't just like, oh, I was sick and imagined a Sonic fighting game for 3 days. No, this is a real thing. Okay, cool. So yeah, no, that game's not very good, but you can run that machine if you know how to play the guy with the little guns and stuff. So shout outs to Fang the Sniper.
You could have one arcade machine in your house somewhere. What would it be, Matt?
Well, I have two, and I kind of.
It's a weird question to ask adults, I guess.
I mean, they are arcade one-ups, so you know, not the most authentic ones. But I have the Killer Instinct one, which is the one I really wanted.
I want that.
And it's one of their later ones, so it has the light up marquee and all that, and the coin slot, blah blah blah. But if I was to get another one, I would love like an authentic like Third Strike one, or the aforementioned Spawn. The Spawn game had such an over-the-top announcer. They would just be like, "You died," like it was just like this, Cookie Monster metal vocalist.
Tom Waits.
Exactly.
Tom Waits in Street Fighter.
There's a couple like I just remember from arcade days that I'm like I would love like an original Soul Calibur. Like I would love original things, but it's like that's why at least Arcade went up. It's just because the actual old arcade machines weighed like 3,000 pounds. Like it's not even like, I could get the money to buy one, but it's just logistically getting it into your home is like a nightmare.
Right.
So
and then it's never leaving. It's there forever.
Yeah, because eventually you're like, I'm not moving this out. It's not worth it. Here, a person that's buying my home, this is yours.
A free arcade.
Take care of it.
The cursed trampoline.
Yeah, it's like a boat.
And an original Final Fight, I would love.
I'd love to have that.
You sorry?
I would love to have that.
Oh, you'd love
original
to have
Final Fight.
I thought you said you did. I was like, oh,
Hell
I
no.
do have the marquee that a friend made for me in a light box. So it's an original marquee of the front of the arcade machine. So it's kind of there in spirit. But yeah, I'd say those are my three, like Soul Calibur, Third Strike, and Final Fight would be awesome.
One advantage that I think Japan has over, say, American arcades is that
Yes.
you can actually sit down at them
Yes.
as opposed to the stand-up versions in American arcades. And I
Yeah.
literally cannot stand up that long. I start to get
Same.
lightheaded and want to almost faint.
You
So
should probably check your blood pressure, Kat.
yeah, I probably should. I do prefer that. However, if I could pick one arcade to have in my house, it would definitely be a DDR machine that I would put ideally in a garage or something, and that would be my workout routine. It's just playing DDR all the time, and then I would become a DDR influencer and be on TikTok.
I would
and
absolutely
stuff.
have a DDR machine.
you
Butterfly 24/7.
Heck yeah. How about you, Eric?
The aforementioned like Tekken, I think like a Tekken 3 or 5 or Tag 1 or 2 would be pretty sick, but also part of me does love light gun games. So like a Time Crisis would be really sick or something like that. Also, like, just for the novelty, what if I had that giant Jurassic Park one that was like the Jeep and all that?
Oh, I love
it was
that.
just in my apartment. And like in my apartment, I live in an apartment, not a house, not like a large space. I want like something so like obtrusive that like when you all see this webcam shot, you just see the Jurassic Park machine behind me running.
Dinosaur blinking on and off.
Part of me really does like that. So yeah, I think I would go for a Tekken machine first because I love playing Tekken on an arcade cab. But if I don't do that, then it would be a light gun game like Time Crisis or I don't know, maybe the Terminator one. I have a weird attachment to like, what was the one with the sniper rifle where you had the scope that you look through?
Silent scope.
That was so sick. I thought that was the coolest thing.
Silent scope.
Yeah. And I was so bad at it that I would want the machine just so I would not have to put so many quarters in. I would actually like get through that game.
This is not like logistically possible, but recently when I was in Las Vegas for Evo, we went to a Dave & Buster's specifically because I called ahead and I said, do you have the new Godzilla rail shooter VR arcade? And they're like, what? And I'm like, do you have a new Godzilla game? I want to come and play it. And they're like, yeah, we have a Godzilla game. I'm like, okay. So you go there and you have to sit in a little car and it's co-op and you put a VR helmet on and the screen is displayed behind you because you're looking through the VR headset and the screen is so that other people can see the game so they can see that it's good.
That's so cool.
It was an incredible, like, because you're just basically shooting a bunch of like smaller kaiju and then 2 or 3 Godzilla characters are there. And like, this is the only Godzilla video game that we've had that isn't like a mobile collab or like a tapping thing on your phone. So I went specifically to play that. It was really, really short, but it was really, really fun. I didn't get sick on the VR at all, which
I'd be worried about.
I can, not all games, but I don't know what it is yet. But apparently, this cabinet cost around $40,000 to manufacture.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Because it's got lights. The car that you're in moves. Like
dang.
So it's as deluxe as you can
Going to
get.
Vegas.
So.
Could buy a car with that money. I'm just gonna put it out
You
there.
could.
You drove through your apartment. Same experience. I'm Godzilla. I'm Godzilla.
Yeah.
Doing donuts.
No, I want a Godzilla cabinet.
I saw
Axe of the Blood God.
I saw a brand new NBA Jam style game. It wasn't called NBA Jam, but it was NBA Jam. It's called NBA Superstars. And it was made by like Raw Thrills. So they have connections to Midway, like Midway in the past. So I played that for a bit and it was like 6-player, at least 4-player, I think. So it was a big deluxe cabinet, 4 players, all in 3D. You're on fire. You had a turbo button. It was just NBA Jam. How is this not on consoles? I don't know. But that the arcade industry, they're very cutthroat nowadays. They're like, no, you can only play this in the arcade because how else are we going to survive? The whole reason the arcade business died is because consoles started giving better versions of these games. So they have to like stick to it as hard as they can. But at the same time, I have to go to Vegas to play them. Montreal doesn't have any of these.
God, when I went to Vegas, I got sick. It was so hot. Ugh.
Yeah.
Way too hot.
Well, that's Axe of the Blood God. We love RPGs, but more importantly, we also love old games, and arcades definitely fit into that. And that is it for this week's episode of Acts of the Blood God, but we got plenty more ahead as part of our charity stream. In about 10 minutes, I will be joined by Rebecca Valentine and Callie Plaguey as I continue part 3 of my Pokemon Crystal Nuzlocke run. It's year 3. We may even beat all of the gym leaders. Nadia 3 rides again. I'm
right.
looking forward
Nadia
to
3.
it. Have you ever seen it? What was that like? I can't remember the Don Hertzfeld thing, but yeah, that's where everyone has like a descendant. It's like Emily 1, Emily 2, Emily 3. I'm Nadia 3. Woo!
Matt, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you on the show. I hope we can have you again another time. Tell us one more time where we can find you.
You can find me with Matt McMuscles, putting that onto anything, your Twitters, your YouTubes. I'm there somewhere abouts. To make retrospectives and video essays on games like my series What Happened and the worst fighting game, which everyone is always like, how dare you say that game's the worst fighting game? I'm like, no, it's me trying to find the worst fighting game.
Yes.
This is it, the contestant on this week's show. I know it's a little clickbaity, but just watch more than 10 seconds of it.
It's a good series. We watch it all the time.
Thank you. And I also have my second gameplay channel, Flophouse Plays. And in October, I'll be doing a whole lot of horror stuff, playing Silent Hill 2 Remake, playing a lot of random horror games that have come out over the last 12 months or so. So I'm currently on the grind doing that because, come the end of August, I have to start prepping for that. So, but it's my favorite time of the year. So look forward to that. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you guys today and for such a good cause as well.
It was great to have you. Big fan.
And just a reminder, we're currently running a promo if you're listening to this over on the Twitch stream at shop.bloodgodpod.com. Use the promo code TRANSRIGHTS to get 10% off all merch, with 50% of the proceeds going to Trans Lifeline. We're going to be continuing on for the next 2 days, all weekend, with so many fun events, capping off with Moonblaze Wolf's speedrun through Super Mario RPG. Don't go away. But in the meantime, I've been your host, Kat Bailey. Thank you so much for listening. And for Matt and Nadia and Eric and myself, happy adventuring.
You're watching the Blood God Pod charity stream, benefiting Trans Lifeline. Donate and become the best of the best of the best.